Hi all. Now that we're getting into week 4, I wanted to share some things with you from the weekly folder and for a group project that you're going to be doing. Yay, I know how everybody loves group projects. Actually, some of you probably do love them, but others of you may have some different ideas about them. But first, let's look at what you're going to be doing for week 4. Where our focus this week is going to be on historical trauma, on what that is and how we can kind of identify it, but more importantly, how we can address it and what groups are most likely to have this kind of trauma. So the first reading that you're going to do this week, I hope that this Word doc shows on here. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way that I think it will. But hopefully you're seeing a document here that says common groups experiencing historical trauma. This is just a very short introduction into what historical, multi-generational, intergenerational trauma is and groups that are likely to experience it. Notice that we've got first Native Americans or First Nation peoples, people of color, immigrants, families experiencing intergenerational poverty. So it's a very short paper. But do read this paper first. Then I do ask you to go ahead and watch this video on generational trauma and healing in Indigenous communities. Dr. Daryl Tonema is an amazing Native person. He's from Oklahoma, but he's also Tuscarora and lives in New York. So there's a video of like a whole afternoon presentation for an organization that I'm actually on a committee for, on the advisory board for this organization, the Native American Student Advocacy Institute through the College Board. So I give you some specific times here from 1635. There's about a 3-minute introduction of who Dr. Tonema is that I'd like for you to hear so that you can hear what his degrees are in, what his experience is. And he ends up playing some music. He's a musician, he's an actor, he has 2 doctorate degrees. He's just a really, really interesting, fun, amazing person. And he's doing work that no one else had been doing, although now others are kind of doing the work as well. So he's done some groundbreaking work on healing in Indigenous communities from trauma. So watch this video, view this document, which is attached up here first, before you begin working on what I mentioned down here, the assigned group. You're going to be reading a research article that's related to intergenerational trauma, and you're going to put together a presentation for the group that we'll share via Zoom next week. So to look at the assignment, what I did was I broke you out into 4 groups based on your location, on where you are. With one exception, Bianca, I did put you in with a telequad group to keep the groups a little bit more even, and since you had already met these people. So in each of the 4 groups, you each have a different article, and each group has a person whom I've identified as kind of the group leader to get things rolling with the groups. And I selected people whom I know have been in the program for a little bit and aren't brand new to elementary education or to any of the education courses. So Hannah, Cherish, Adriana, and Riley will get things going as far as establishing a Google document. So now to look at the project itself and some things that you'll need to keep in mind while you're doing it. So for those of you who are a little more global and you kind of need to know the big picture, you're all going to work together to do a presentation that's going to be about 12 to 16 minutes or so for the groups with 4. It'll be a little bit longer for that with the group that has 5. So once the group leader starts a Google Doc, and please include me in that Google Doc because I like to go in and see your discussion. I may also jump in and give you some suggestions as well. You can go ahead and start that doc right away. But as I state here, please do read that first short paper and then view the video. And let me go back to this. In the video, I did put some points that I want you to consider, even take notes on first. All of these terms and concepts to think about, such as what is sovereignty? Well, you may have thought about sovereignty as far as states, as far as native tribes, but the way that Dr. Tonema represents it has to do with individual sovereignty, who we are and how we have control over ourselves. Scaffolding, you're familiar with that term. What about identity, self-identity? And what does it mean for something to be activated? And that's going to be in context with trauma. And some of the concepts, he now has 6 of the 7 C's. He's trying to put 6 C words together: calm, caring, confident, competent. And in a later presentation, he did have 2 more. You'll hear what I'm talking about when you hear the presentation. And what are oppression and internalized oppression? And this has so much to do with the differentiation that we do in class. So this will be very relevant. Something you really need to read first if you're not familiar with the vagus nerve. And we will be talking about that more in depth the next time that we meet via Zoom. We will be talking about that. But you're going to read this Wikipedia entry so that you have a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about. So I'm going to stop the video for just a moment. I'm going to just pause for a moment and back to the presentation that you're going to be doing. Within your group, you're going to begin working together on the Google Docs so that it's asynchronous. You don't ever have to meet all together at the same time via Zoom unless you choose to. You could possibly meet on Monday evening when we don't have class to work on putting this information together. So before beginning, again, you know which parts that you need to read and that you need to watch the video. And then in the meantime, you and your group need to be making some determinations. Now that you are getting together in your group, you're going to discuss some of the key points from the article that you want to make. You don't have to cover the whole article. You may be even able to pull out just a few key terms and focus on those, because you're going to also be selecting, you're going to be locating an additional source to go along with whatever your areas of focus are. So first of all, let's look at the areas of focus. I've pulled up one of the articles here called A Conceptual Model of Historical Trauma, and it's from the Journal of Health Disparities Research and Practice. So it has an abstract with keywords here. It gives an introduction and explains what historical trauma theory is. So for example, that could be one person's area of focus. And then it gets more into what historical trauma theory is. But say, for example, you wanted to break some of this out and look at, let's see, what was I looking at? At health and disease that come, that are related to historical trauma. Let's see, what was I looking at? Here are some ideas. Mass trauma. Trauma is not limited to a single catastrophic event, something that continues over a period of time. And that can be related to slavery, to war, to students being sent off to boarding schools, to Native students in particular. So traumatic events. And then if you look down here in the review of literature, you may find some additional terms that you're interested in to use. It was first conceptualized in the 1960s based on studies of persistent trauma among Holocaust survivors and their families after World War II. So one person may want to delve into how historical trauma came about, the term itself, and the way that it's used today. How did that come about? Who was being studied at that time? And then here we see that in the last decade, much research has been done with American Indian, Alaska Native populations. That could be another key concept that someone wants to use. So you don't only have to go by bolded headings, for example. You don't have to break up an article into 4 or 5 pieces, but you do need to skim through the whole article, see what some of the key ideas are, and then determine as groups what you want to pull out from that. Something that you will need to do as a group is develop an introduction. Let's see. So you're going to give an introductory slide, and it's going to give the title and source of the article. It's going to have your names on there, but then you're also going to have an introduction to your presentation itself. And your introduction should be overarching to give us an idea of what it is that we're about to hear about. You're also going to have a conclusion, and both of these should be worked on by the full group. That will be part of what you're doing on that Google Doc that you put together. So in the meantime, you will have determined what kind of format you want to use. It can be something as simple as recording on Zoom. Each person creates some slides and then you record it on Zoom, or you put a PowerPoint together, or you do it on Canvas or some other format, whatever you all decide that's going to work well for you. And remember that your oral part, each person should be about 3 to 5 minutes. You're going to use the slides to guide your discussion. You're not going to read word for word from the slides ever. You don't ever put your whole presentation on the slides and then just read it. Bulleted points work really well, or graphic organizers, but never word for word what you're going to actually share with the group. So on the score sheet, you will see here that scores that are in bold represent group scores. So for example, for the introductory slide, the whole group gets the same score. Relevant introduction, the whole group gets the same score. Same for the conclusion. And then the individual scores, notice that 20 being the highest number here, is your oral presentation, including the relevance and length. And you're going to tell us how long your time is here. We'll have somebody time you. And then everyone will do a self-assessment, and, you know, don't be too modest. If hey, I did what I was supposed to do, I contributed, I worked with everybody, give yourself 5. Or, oh man, I was really, really busy with work. I wasn't able to help as much with the conclusion as I thought I would, so I'm going to give myself a 3. You know, just be honest, we're adults. And then the last one is that you are going to provide a statement, because I think all of us have experiences working in groups when things were not particularly fair or equitable. And sometimes we had to pull weight for others. And so this is the place where you're going to let me know that. And again, be honest. Be honest. If 2 or 3 group members say this other person didn't really contribute as much as what we would have liked. We tried to have this done by this deadline, but this person, you know, didn't follow through. Then I would expect that those statements there from the group members to align with that person's self-assessment. So we're going to hold each other accountable. That's what we do. We're educators. All right, we will talk about this. Well, we actually won't talk about it in class because you'll be giving your presentation when we get together. So I'm going to pause again for a moment and come right back. To conclude, I would say that you should begin working on Monday evening, since we're not meeting for class this week. That's a great time for you to get started and do some time together. Also, if you as a group determine that you would like to meet together, you do each have 40 minutes of Zoom time for free in each session. So that's a good way to collaborate if you need to do that as well, although you certainly don't have to do that. Any questions, anything that's not quite clear, let me know, and I will be glad to help you figure it out, since this is a new project for each of us. I'm very excited about what you're going to bring back to the group and share with us. Right, that's about all I have with this presentation, and best of luck.